Bismillahi walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh again, and peace be upon you all. Today I was thinking that, we're living in times where we could use some feedback and advice, right, on how to not just navigate this time, but I think we could all use a little bit of recentering. And I think that at the end of the day, there are timeless pieces of advice that always work. And of course, the Quran, this is why it's so important for us to really root ourselves in the Quran during this time. And you might think, well, there's so much going on in the world, and it's hard sometimes even to imagine how you're going to be feeling any differently, or that there's a shift that's going to happen. You have those days where you get up and everything looks gloomy and everything, just feels heavy, and the world, it's intense. And then you think, well, how is anything going to shift me? And this is really the time where we should never underestimate the Quran. We should really never underestimate the power of Allah's words upon our hearts. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made the dua, "Oh Allah, make the Quran the spring of my heart," right? Allahumma ja'al al-Quran rabi'a qulubana, the spring of our hearts. What is a spring? A spring is not just a pond, right? Or a place of where you get a one-time supply of water. A spring is flowing water. It continues to benefit, it continues to, bring forth water and benefit anything it touches. And we really need to be patient with that process when we are reconnecting with the Quran. That first and foremost, I'm going to root myself in the Quran during this time, because we are living in times of great heaviness, great confusion, there's just, everything is, it seems like a lot of people are dealing with guilt and just frustration and anger, and there's a lot of heaviness and a lot of people not feeling as hopeful, right, given everything, especially in Gaza. And so this is the time. And then you add on top of that your own personal life and everything going on in your own life. And so what is your anchor during these times? It has to be the Quran. It has to be Allah's words. And there are things, but in addition to this, there are things that I think are so important, to just pieces of advice to hold on to during times of great distress. And that's what I wanted to focus on today. And I wanted to mention the timeless piece of advice of Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim, rahimahullah. So it's a long piece. I'm going to read through it once, all of it, and then we're going to break it down. Okay? Sounds good? So Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, and I ask you, really, before I start reading this, whatever you're concerned about outside of this place right here, outside of this space, try to just focus on the present. You're here, and this is where Allah has placed you. Put away your phones, put away distractions, build that muscle of being in the here and now, so that your heart can become awakened to what we are discussing and become awakened to the reminder. A lot of times the reason we are doing so many good things and we walk away not nourished, because we're not present, we're scattered. Our heart is scattered. A piece of it is over here, a piece of it is still thinking about what just happened, a piece of it is thinking about what's going to happen after I leave here, a piece of it is thinking about the message I have to respond to, or the work that I have to do tomorrow. But you're here, so you might as well be whole while you're here. What does that mean? Presence is you allowing yourself that all your scattered pieces come and become centered in the place that you are in. That, let me take back this scattered piece that I put over there, the scattered piece that I put over here. No. They all need to be here. They all need to be here, and they all need to be present. Because that's how I can walk out of these doors more nourished than I came in. So before I begin, take a moment to renew your intentions, to make the intention for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you're here, and be present with the words that I'm going to share with you. Because what I'm about to share is just a timeless piece of advice. Okay, Bismillah. So Imam Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah, he says, a friend will not literally share your struggles, and a loved one cannot physically take away your pain, and a close one will not stay up the night on your behalf. So look after yourself, protect yourself, nurture yourself, and don't give life's events more than what they are really worth. Know for certain that when you break, no one will heal you except you. And when you are defeated, no one will give you victory except your determination. Your ability to stand up and carry on is your responsibility. Do not look for your self-worth in the eyes of people. Look for your worth from within your conscious, or within yourself. If you're within your conscience. So I'm going to repeat that one. Do not look for your self-worth in the eyes of people. Look for your worth from within your conscience. If your conscience is at peace, then you will ascend high. And if you truly know yourself, then what is said about you won't harm you. Do not carry the worries of this life, because this is for Allah. And do not carry the worries of sustenance or your risk, because it is from Allah. And do not carry the anxiety for the future, because it is in the hands of Allah. Carry one thing: how to please Allah. Because if you please Him, He pleases you, fulfills you, and enriches you. Do not weep from a life that made your heart weep. Just say, "Oh Allah, compensate me with good in this life and the hereafter." Sadness departs with a sajda. Happiness comes with a sincere dua. Allah does not forget the good you do, nor does He forget the good you did to others, and the pain you relieved them from. Nor will He forget the eye which was about to cry, but you made it laugh. Live your life with this principle. Be good even if you don't receive good, not because for others' sake, but because Allah loves those who do good. How beautiful is this piece of advice? How many of you want me to read it one more time? Yeah? Should we read it one more time? Okay, I'm going to read it one more time. Yeah. I'll share that in the you could just put Ibn Al-Qayyim rahimullah, and you could put timeless piece of advice, and you will find it, inshallah. And I'll provide the source after, inshallah. So I'll read it one more time, and then I want to break it down, okay? But really just be present with it. Don't be on your phones. Again, a present heart is the best recorder in this life. A present heart is the best recorder in this life. We live in a world where we feel like we have to record every moment. But this heart is the best recorder. If you allow it to be present, it will take away what no phone can ever take. Right? Because this heart has the capacity to derive meaning. But if we're so busy, we have to write down everything, or, it's okay to, of course, take notes, but allow yourself to take it all in first. It's the same thing when you listen to someone. That's why I love listening, because it allows you to just take it all in, and just, you don't have to do anything, but just open your heart and open your ears and just really be present with another person. Okay? So I'm going to read it again, and if you weren't present before, try your best to be present as much as you can now. Okay? Bismillah. A friend will not literally share your struggles. And again, for those who are joining us new, this is a timeless piece of advice by Ibn Al-Qayyim rahimahullah. A friend will not literally share your struggles, and a loved one cannot physically take away your pain, and a close one will not stay up the night on your behalf. So look after yourself, protect yourself, nurture yourself, and do not give life's events more than what they are really worth. Know for certain that when you break, no one will heal you except you. Your ability to stand up again and carry on is your responsibility. Do not look for your self-worth in the eyes of the people. Look for your worth from within your conscience or within yourself. If your conscience is at peace, then you will ascend high. And if you truly know yourself, then what is said about you won't harm you. Do not carry the worries of this life, because this is for Allah. And do not carry the worries of sustenance or your risk, because it is from Allah. And do not carry the anxiety for the future, because it is in the hands of Allah. Carry one thing: how to please Allah. Because if you please Him, He pleases you, fulfills you, and enriches you. Do not weep from a life that made your heart weep. Just say, "Oh Allah, compensate me with good in this life and in the hereafter." Sadness departs with a sajda. Happiness comes with a sincere dua. Allah does not forget the good you do, nor does He forget the good you did to others and the pain you relieved them from. Nor will He forget the eye which was about to cry, but you made it laugh. Live your life with this principle. Be good even if you don't receive good, not because for others' sake, but because Allah loves those who do good. Okay? So let's break this down, because He covers, within this timeless piece of advice, He covers universal things that many of us struggle with, where we have placed our worth, our attachments. He addresses disappointment, right? He addresses resentment. When you do good for others and then you're like, maybe they don't reciprocate, or maybe they don't do the same good to you back, or maybe you're kind and you receive the opposite. So He addresses these universal experiences that many of us have: anger, resentment, disappointment, sadness. And so let's start with the first part. A friend will not literally share your struggles, and a loved one cannot physically take away your pain, and a close one will not stay up the night on your behalf. I think this is important, because especially in our world today, I think that a lot of times people treat others like an extension of themselves. And what I mean by that is that we don't know where we end and other people start. And we think, and this leads to entitlement, where, you're an extension of me, so if I'm struggling, you're supposed to be doing this and that. Or if I'm struggling, then this is what my expectations are of you. And sometimes our expectations are not reasonable. And sometimes they are. Listen, we could have basic expectations of people, because with every title comes expectations, right? If you have a parent, if a child has a parent, the responsibilities of, there's basic expectations of what it entails. If a person has the title of parent, it comes with that as what? Certain expectations. If you call someone a spouse, you can't say, "Oh, you're my spouse," but there's no expectations. No. And I don't like this world we live in, where people just say like, "Oh, expect nothing." That's not reasonable. And that's not realistic, because with every single role that a person plays in your life, or place that you give a person in your life, it comes with expectations. If you call someone a friend, that comes with basic expectations. Or else you could call them an acquaintance. But a friend is sacred. You don't call anyone a friend, right? So what I'm saying here is that not to have expectations of people, but when your expectations are rigid, and a lot of times when we struggle, where do we look? We start looking around us. Who's helping me? Who's showing up? And that's why part of that is human, right? When you're struggling, you look for connection. You look for support. But sometimes that leads to a lot of disappointment. And sometimes you fixate too much on the people, especially when you're in a bad place, especially when you're in a dark period of your life, especially when you're struggling. This is why they say that you know who your true friends are when? In your darkest of times. That friends are like the stars in the darkest of nights. Because when you are in a dark period, you notice the light more easily. You notice people more easily. You notice who shows up, and you notice the absence of people. But sometimes our pain during our most difficult times makes us place unreasonable expectations. Or if they're reasonable, sometimes, even if they're reasonable, we still might get disappointed, right? And we get hurt. Why didn't this person show up for me? I was there for them during this time and this time and this time. You know, or wow, I haven't heard from this person. They know I'm going through a hard time. So here Ibn Al-Qayyim, right away, he starts off and he's addressing this, that a friend is not going to literally share your struggle. There are people who are like that, but that's not always the case. And a loved one can't take away your pain. And sometimes we want that. People, when they struggle, and I see this in my work, you know, especially sometimes people, when they come to like counseling or therapy, they think like, you know, it's our job to like take it away. You know, but they do this also, people do this with their family members or their loved ones. You know, you ever go to like vent and you just want them to say the right thing, and you want them to like make you not feel the way that you were feeling a few minutes ago. But sometimes it doesn't work like that. You know, so here he's saying, adjust your expectations. This is the first thing. Adjust your expectations. Turn the eye of your heart away from fixating on the people so much. That people are flawed like you. They're human like you. They're in need and poor like you. They also have a Rabb like you. And they're in need of so many things like you. So just don't fixate so much on the people. He says then, look after yourself. Protect yourself. And I love this part. Nurture yourself. A lot of times when people are going through pain, in their hardest times, one of the most common themes that comes up in my work as a therapist is, how are you nurturing yourself? Well, instead of, it's basically like, person will come in and they will be so fixated on all of the things that are happening outside of them. And when I ask that, well, like, for example, they'll say, oh, this person did this, or this is happening, and this is going on, and this is the situation. Because of all these external things, that's why I'm struggling, right? But then when you ask, well, how are you taking care of yourself during this time? How did you pour into yourself during this time? How did you nurture yourself during this time? A lot of times they're like, wait, what? I'm talking about all these things. Did you hear me? You know? And I'm like, I know, but those things you can't control. But you can control how you took care of you. You can control how you nurtured you. You can control how you gave to yourself what you were expecting others to give you. And listen, I am not unaware that we live in times where people are losing core values of showing up for people. I'm not unaware of this. This is actually one of the most common things that comes up in my work nowadays. It's almost like people are losing the value and importance of caring and showing up truly for others. You know, I saw someone post today and say something like, you know, the best friendships are the ones where you don't need to check up on each other, or something like that. You know, like the best friendships are the ones where you don't hear from each other for months and you don't need to check up on each other. And I'm like, is that what? Is that a friendship? You know, I get it. It's nice to have easy friendships where you give each other space. But this is the language out there now. Did the Prophet ﷺ not check up on his friends for months? No. This is the language out there. You know, it's okay to, you know, it's okay to disappear and be so focused and consumed with your life that you forget about those around you. That you forget about the needs of others. And we're human. That does happen. But it can't be normalized. It can't be what everyone should be okay with. No. Let me step outside of myself. When the Prophet ﷺ noticed that someone was missing from the community where he hasn't seen them for a while, it was his habit to go and say, where is so-and-so? The presence of people mattered, and the absence of people hurt him. The presence of people mattered, and the absence of people was noticed. So we're living. So the reason why I say that, because I'm not, in sharing this advice, I'm not saying that we shouldn't, you know, that we shouldn't be hurt when people don't show up, or we're human. But everything must be put in proportion. And even if you're hurt, that's okay. You're hurt. It's valid. But it's time to readjust and take the eye of your heart away from where you were placing it and back onto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't use that to go chase the people who are not giving you what you need. This is not an opportunity to go and chase after those who hurt you, or to, okay, well, why are they not giving me what? No. Allah's doing this for a reason. When you find that people are disappointing you, this is a doorway to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing that is more powerful of an avenue to Allah than disappointment and heartbreak when the people let you down. We need those reminders actually in life, because they remind you that no, they're not the source of my solution. They're not the source of my like what I need right now. They're not the source of everything. They are limited, just like me. And a lot of times people don't realize that they place people in a very unhealthy place in their life. And sometimes that causes an insincere relationship. Why? Because then they become a means to filling a void for you. You're not actually genuinely, of course you might love them, but it becomes more about your attachment to them keeping you from being alone or having to face anything alone. And I see this all the time, where people have an extreme dependence on, people to solve everything for them. Where once they have a problem, they're so agitated they can't even sit 1 minute with themselves. Need to pick up the phone, call so and so. This is what happened. You believe what happened? Right away. Like they have to release it to someone else. And so if that's your go-to habit, that tells you that your dependence is not balanced. And you need to build that muscle of being able to sit with yourself and take it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be able to understand that He is enough for you. Now when you go to that friend, you could still go to that friend and talk. It's going to be different. Now you're going to actually be more aware of, what do I need from this friend? What am I seeking? Am I just seeking to vent? Or am I actually seeking a solution? Is this even the right person to go to? Not everyone. You could have friends and you could have people in your life that you love, but not every single one of the people you love is right for every scenario. One friend can be perfect to go to advice about one area, but they are not the best person to go to, let's say, about your marriage, right? And another friend might be the best person to go to about, let's say, career, but not, or the marriage situation, but not about, other things. So this doesn't mean that they're bad people, and doesn't mean that we're all limited. Everyone has their strengths. But the more that you pause and not always, depend on people to such an extreme way, when you take that time to really assess what you're feeling, take it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then things become clear. The emotion is not as intense. So that when the emotion is not as intense and you give time to sit with it and everything, now you can have more clarity and say, well, what do I need right now? And it's so empowering. It's so empowering to be able to get that nourishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and get that strength and really center yourself before you know what you're about to ask or say. Right? So he says, look after yourself. Protect yourself, nurture yourself. That's the part that I focused on. And don't give life's events more than what they are really worth. This one's really important, especially in our times today. You guys have heard me talk about how we've become so hypersensitive to agitation in our world, right? And, things that are not really threatening to our safety have become threatening to our safety, emotional safety. And, that's why there's an increase in anxiety, right? Well, anxiety, there's typical anxiety, which is like normal anxiety. It's part of the human experience, not necessarily bad. But when we diagnose someone, let's say with an anxiety disorder, has reached the point where you see things that are not actual threats to your safety as threats, right? Because anxiety is a mechanism that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. Like, it's meaning that it's a natural human experience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that mankind was created anxious. And we know in the world of psychology, there's good anxiety, there's good stress that propels you forward. But when you've reached the point, and this is why we always have to take preventative measures and take care of ourselves and take care of our mental and emotional health, so things don't progress to the level where they're uncontrollable, right? Where everything becomes a threat. Things that are not even a problem become a threat. Things that are not even, really affecting you in the long term, you look at as, oh my God, this is so big. Could be a comment that somebody said, and you're ruminating over it, and you're thinking about it, and you're going to bed thinking about it, and you're giving this person so much power. They really have no power over your life. And this is what's happening in our world today. People are consumed with things that don't really matter in the long run. And it's chipping away at our mental and emotional and spiritual health. So I love this statement. Look after yourself. Protect yourself. Take preventative measures. Nurture yourself. And don't give life's events more than what they are really worth. Know for certain that when you break, no one will heal you except you. Now, of course, Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, he knows that Allah is a shafi, right? He's the healer. But what he's saying here is something that we kind of say in psychology, that your healing is your responsibility. That you have to do what you can to heal, to overcome barriers, to tackle things that have kept you from becoming your best self, right? So when he says here, you know for certain that when you break, no one will heal you except you. So stop waiting, basically. Stop waiting for people to come and rescue you. Stop waiting for a good friend to come along, a good, if this person comes into my life, if I get married, if I have children, if I, all these things that people wait for. So they think, if I have those things, then I'll be happy. Or a job, or a career, or if I get this, or I attain this status, or whatever it is. Everybody's different. Everybody has that thing that they have associated their worth to. Have this much money in the bank. If I have reached this, if I look like this physically, right, then I will have, then I'll be okay. But here he says, know for certain that when you break, no one will heal you except you. And when you are defeated, no one will give you victory except your determination. So you have to take your responsibility for your healing. You have to take your responsibility for where you want to be in life. If you've been stuck in a place for a long time, it's time to assess that. It's time to assess that. How am I in my own way? If you're waking up every day and you're feeling the same way, and it's not good, and it's not allowing you to show up to your life fully, to maximize your life, then it's time to assess. How am I not taking responsibility for my own healing, for my own growth, for my own transformation, for the way that I am feeling every day? In our world today, it's very easy to blame things outside of us. It's very easy to say, I am the way I am because my parents, and to fixate on that forever. I see this a lot in my work, right? And I get it, don't get me wrong. I know how much childhood, upbringing, all these things impact. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself a question, right? How am I going to take responsibility for getting myself to a place I want to be, so I don't repeat the cycles of the things that have happened? But a lot of times people blame the world. It's the world we live in. It's the world we live in. Listen, the world is always going to have periods that are difficult. That's universal. That's been the case throughout history. So as Muslims, Islam teaches us to always look for our power, to always look for how we can take responsibility, to always look for how can I make a difference. To always look for, yes, okay, bad things have happened, difficult things have happened. Yes, okay, I went through this trauma, or I went through this difficult period. Yes, Allah withheld this from me, or this person hurt me, or this happened. Okay, all of these things happened. But I can either stay stuck in that, and I'm not telling you not to feel the pain that comes with it, by the way. When I say get unstuck, I'm not telling you to not validate your pain, because Allah does not invalidate your pain. Allah does not say don't be sad, meaning like don't, like, Allah does not say, you know, you don't need to be sad here, or don't, like, minimizing your emotions. Allah does not say that. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is basically to direct all your experiences to Him. That's what He teaches us throughout the Quran. So in our faith, it doesn't minimize our emotions. It doesn't negate our human experience. But it helps us put everything into perspective so that we don't stay stuck for too long, because this life is so short. This life compared to the hereafter is like a drop in the ocean. Imagine you are fixating on the drop while there's a whole ocean. And it's hard, right? It's hard when you're feeling so many emotions to see this. But this is why connecting to the akhirah is so important. When you understand that your life does not end here, when you understand that when we go to the akhirah and we're asked about our life here, and we're asked how long we spent in this world, and we say a day or part of a day, then you know that also puts into perspective the bad that happens. And the people, when they go to Jannah, they're going to say, what struggles? What struggles we went through in dunya? Now they're in an eternal life compared to this world. So you can only get to a point where you realize these truths if you are connected to the akhirah. I think that's really important to know. To take time to spend, reflecting on the verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you about the next world, about your meeting with Him, about what He holds for you. And to also really connect with the stories of the Prophets ﷺ, who endured the greatest hardships. But also, they did not blame anyone else, which I always found fascinating. Like the story of Yusuf ﷺ. Can you imagine, you're a prophet of Allah, and they are the best of people, ﷺ. And here he is in a jail for many years. And while he's in this jail, he's being helpful to the people in this jail, in this prison. And even though he's there, wrongfully accused, but he helps those two men that had dreams, and they asked him because he was good at interpreting dreams. Can you imagine, you are the prophet of Allah, and you've been waiting all these years. You've been taken from your family at a young age, and you're living now far away. They don't know where you are. And then on top of that, people hurt you. Not just your own family, but now other people hurt you and wrongfully accuse you. His brothers wanted to get rid of him. Now he is also living around people who want him in jail. And then after all this hardship, he watches people who are in the prison with him leave before him, get released before him. And he is the prophet of Allah. Does this happen to us in our lives? Maybe you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something, and then you watch other people get it. Maybe you've been making dua so hard for something, and then you see that Allah easily gives it to someone else, or He delays it for you a little bit, and you think, what do you start thinking? Why me? What am I doing wrong? Why me? But does this mean that something's wrong with you? Then if we use that logic, then we would say something's wrong, right? If delay equals that Allah's mad at you, or delay equals that something's wrong with you, then look at Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Look at Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam in Gaza. A lot of the parents who, so many times I've heard parents say, as they're grieving the loss of their child, say that we waited forever to have this child. We tried for so many years to have this child. And here Allah's taking the child that they waited forever to have. But they're saying, Alhamdulillah. And their faith is so strong. What is that? It's, I see beyond this world. My life does not end here. And this is insignificant to that life, to that world. So, back to the story of Yusuf. Sorry, I forgot to finish it full circle. When Allah finally released Yusuf alayhi salam, excuse me, girls, can you guys please keep it down? Thank you. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala released Yusuf alayhi salam, what did he give Yusuf? The two men that he released, one became a servant and one ended up being killed. So don't think that just because Allah gives someone something quickly doesn't mean it's going to last, basically. That's right. But with Yusuf alayhi salam, he made him wait, but look at how he honored him. The status he gave him. How he reunited him with he gave him a happy ending. So we can only experience these things when we strengthen our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the reason I mentioned the story of Yusuf initially was because he didn't blame anybody. He didn't blame anybody. You know what's so interesting? In the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, in the Quran, before those one of those two men, when they were about to be released, he asked one of them to mention him to the king, right? You know what's interesting? In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Shaitan made him forget. So interesting, right? Aren't we ever put in situations sometimes where we ask someone for help and then they forget us? And then we're like, I told this person what I was going through. They never followed up. They never, right? Or maybe you ask someone for actual help about something specific and they said, I got you, right? And then they didn't at all, right? And I paused at this verse. I was like, subhanAllah, and Shaitan made him forget. Allah could have said in the Quran, this man forgot, right? I thought this was interesting. It made me think that that Shaitan wants us to forget the needs of others. That Shaitan works hard to make you distracted with your life and forget to help the person you said you were going to help. This is why we can't forget Gaza. We can't forget, to do our part. And even after this genocide ends and ceasefire happens, we can't forget. We can't go back to sleep. But even in our own community, when someone asks us for help, we have to work hard to not forget. Because we all can, make that mistake. But I thought that was interesting, that Shaitan made him forget. Now, did Yusuf alayhi salam blame that person? Did he say, I'm in here because that person forgot? No, he depended on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He trusted that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a plan for him. And he knows that it's my responsibility to just to pass this test, to do what I can. And so again, know for certain that when you break, no one will heal you except you, of course, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you are defeated, no one will give you victory except your determination, of course, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for Allah is the one who gives victory. Your ability to stand up again and carry on is your responsibility. So you've fell. You've had setbacks. Things are not placed where you want them to be right now. Maybe you've been trying for something and it hasn't worked and you feel exhausted. What choice do you have? What better choice do you have other than getting back up? So if you're in that place right now in your life and you feel like, keep trying towards something, nothing is working, I'm still stuck in the same place, I'm still feeling the same way. Okay, well, what other choice do you have? What better choice? What is a choice that can be higher or better than the choice of getting back up? Everything else that brings you nothing. Getting back up gives you hope for something. So ya Allah, let me reset. Let me renew. Let me realign myself with you. Yes, maybe I failed so many times, but I have no other choice. Because if I stay down, then I only dig a deeper hole for myself. Then now when I try to get back up, it's only going to be harder. But if I get up now, it's easier than if I wait. It's easier than if I keep going lower and lower and lower in a lower state. This is what it means to take preventative measures. So if you're sad, if you're going through a hard time, if you feel stuck, getting back up today, realigning yourself today with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, turning to Him today is still better than you waiting till tomorrow. Because it will be harder to do so tomorrow. You see, every day you delay doing what serves you in any area in your life, whether it's, your finals are coming up or work is due or something that you have to get done, anytime you procrastinate, it only gets harder. So today you're like, no, I can put it off till tomorrow. But then tomorrow it's harder to start. Okay, I'll put it off till tomorrow. It's harder to start tomorrow. With any area in your life, you can apply this with any area in your life, any area you're trying to grow in. Even cleaning a mess in your room. Oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to clean this pile of clothes today. Well, tomorrow it's a bigger pile. So it's always easier, remind yourself this, it's easier to start today than wait till tomorrow. Do not look, this is a really important one. Do not look for your self-worth in the eyes of people. Look for your worth from within yourselves or your conscience. If your conscience is at peace, then you will ascend high. And if you truly know yourself, then what is said about you won't harm you. So what is your conscience? It's that measure within you that assesses your values. But the question is then, do you know what you stand for? Do you know what your values are? Many people spent most of their lives never assessing their values, right? Never assessing their values and never knowing what are their values. What is your value? What is important to you? What do you deem important? You know why it's important to know your values? Because then you know what battles to pick. If you don't know your values, you're going to get mad at anything. You're going to be swayed by anything. But if you know who you are, like it says, you truly know yourself, then what is said about you won't harm you. The reason many people sit and ruminate over what is said about them or what people say is because they don't know themselves. Really. When you know yourself, you spend less time ruminating on why did that person say that? What this person? It actually speaks, when you're ruminating on something, it speaks to a disconnect from yourself. Sometimes the advice I give to people when they feel like they're stressing over a particular conflict or situation with someone, I always say, well, what is true about you regarding this conflict? What is true? What is true about, okay, what did you say? Is it true? Okay, did you say it kindly? Stick to the facts. Stick to what is true about you. Your intention, how you presented it, what you were trying to relay. Did you speak truthfully? Okay, if you know these facts about yourself, if you know the truth about yourself, actually it starts to ground them a little bit. They're like, oh wow, yeah, I didn't even say anything. Or I didn't say anything wrong. I didn't higher my voice. I didn't say, I said it respectfully. And then they're able to filter out falsehood from truth. Okay, well, this is what I said. This is what I stood for. And that person had a reaction to it that was unhealthy. Or it could be that you realize that you did actually say something not in the right way, and then you could own up to it, and then it's done, right? But the thing is that a lot of times when we ruminate over things, it's because we don't actually know what we're feeling. We don't actually know what our values are. So, and our worth is attached to that person's opinion of us. And many people live like this, where I'm only worthy when everyone is happy with me. I'm only worthy when there's no conflict. I'm only worthy when everyone approves of every decision I make. This is impossible. This is why people's anxiety is through the roof these days, because this society has programmed us to be so attached to our image. Think about our world. Everything is about image, right? Social media, what is it? What image are you presenting? What's your brand, they say, right? I never understood that. But I'm not in marketing, but like basically it's like, what are you, when people see you, what is the brand you're presenting? What is the image you're presenting? Our world is so hyper fixated on presenting, and this affects all areas. This is why people don't, we have these unspoken rules, right, in our society, or maybe they're spoken, like even about clothing. Like you can't repeat the same outfit. You can't go to work with the same outfit. But what if your outfit is clean? Who created these rules? This is why they're starting something called sustainable fashion, I think. And it's interesting. People were talking about how people were responding to them. Like, are you wearing the same? Didn't you wear that earlier this week? Yeah. And like we've created this hyper fixation on image. People say, oh, you don't have people will say to me, oh, family members are telling them, oh, you should be at this, should have this car, you should have this. Who said that? Or if you have this job, you should drive this. Speaking to a friend recently, and mashallah, they are educated, they have great careers, but they've had the same car for over a decade. And it's amazing. It's a Toyota, but it's not a brand new one. And I was telling her, that's amazing. You don't need to keep up with image. What is that? Something works. But this speaks to what people feel. When people feel like they always have to keep up with image, it's I've attached my worth to what people think. And fashion also plays a role in this. Women will say, oh, I dress up because, you see videos like this on Instagram and things like that. People like, I dress up for other women's reactions. I'm sure you guys have seen videos like this, right? And it's like, why? But anyways, so you have to assess where you're attached, like where your self-worth is attached to other people. Is it you have to maintain their opinion of you? You have to make sure that they always approve of you. Because every time, if you become so obsessed with that, you lose parts of yourself. And so Ibn Al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, it's amazing. Like he wrote this hundreds of years ago, right? And to really speaking to a lot of the behaviors, these are universal behaviors, hundreds of years ago and today. So he says, if your conscience is at peace, then you will ascend high. And if you truly know yourself, then what is said about you won't harm you. And he says, do not carry the worries of this life because this is for Allah. Meaning, Allah is responsible, Allah is your caretaker in this world. And he says, do not carry the worries of sustenance because it is from Allah. I mentioned this ayah before from Surah Taha, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, do not look longingly at what we have given others, right? And that this is a test for them. I mention this ayah frequently. But I also mention that in those verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, La nas'aluka rizqa, nahnu narzukuk, right? That we do not ask you to provide, we provide. And this is such a good verse to repeat when you're so worried about your sustenance. Allah saying, La nas'aluka rizqa, nahnu narzukuk. We do not ask you to provide. When have we asked you to provide? When have I placed that as a responsibility for you? So if you're waiting for sustenance in any capacity, risk is anything that you're waiting from Allah, financial gain, anything. Allah did not ask you when your sustenance is going to come or how much of it is going to come. We provide for you. We decide that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this. But you know what then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you what you have to do? And call your people to establish the prayer. He then reminds you to do what he actually asked you to do, which is uphold his commands. Do you delay the prayer? Do you pray on time? Do you answer his call? But you're focusing on, no, I'm responsible for this, my risk, while abandoning what you're actually responsible for. And so it's flipped. You're focusing on what Allah did not put in your control, Meaning the outcome, not like you're not going to skip work and say like, Allah, you didn't ask me to provide. No, but you're going to do it, but you're going to disconnect. The outcome is not up to you. What and when and how, that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's responsibility. And do not carry the worries of sustenance because it is from Allah. And do not carry the anxiety for the future because it is in the hands of Allah. Carry one thing, how to please Allah. Because if you please Him, He pleases you, fulfills you, and enriches you. There's a hadith that says when a person makes Allah the concern, or their humum, their concerns, one, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah takes care of all His other concerns. When you prioritize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you make Him your greatest concern, He takes care of everything you put second to Him. So how does that look like practically in our day? Let's say you're fixating on something, but then you take the time to say, you know what? How can I please Allah? Maybe I will do istighfar instead of sit here and worry about this. Or you pick up the Quran and you say, I'm going to spend the whole day, Ya Allah, just doing things that please you. Let's say you're consumed and you say, you know what? I'm going to do something that pleases Allah. I'm going to go help somebody. By the end of that day, you find yourself richer internally. So, carry one thing, how to please Allah. Because if you please Him, He pleases you, fulfills you, and enriches you. How many of us, when we are going through a hard time, feeling a lack of motivation, feeling sadness, feeling defeated, all of these things, right? How many of us take the moment to say, how can I please Allah today? How can I please Allah today? What can I do to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And just that wording of how can I please Allah? Like meaning, Ya Allah, I'm upset right now. And I am having a bad day. Or I am not in a good place. And I feel a lack of motivation. I feel down. I feel stuck. But Ya Allah, you know what I care about more? I want you to be happy with me. I want you to be radi anni. I want you to be approving of me. Can you imagine how Allah will look at you in those moments? Here is my abd, having a bad day. Not in a good place. But his concern or her concern is, am I pleased with them? Here I am withholding something from my abd. Or not, or testing him with something. Or putting them through a hard time, and my abd is saying, is Allah pleased with me? How do you think Allah will look at you during that day? Do you think Allah will not do what you need and give you what you need? If our relationship with Allah is rooted in love, you will understand this. That when you love someone, you want them to be happy with you. So try this. Try this on a day that you are, even today. How can I prioritize Allah being pleased with me for the rest of this evening? Meaning that when I walk out of here, even now, you could renew your intention and say, Ya Allah, I want you to be pleased with me for coming here. Are you pleased with me, Ya Allah, for coming here? Well, I know that you love those who come to remember you. Right? And you think of all the ways in which you coming here makes Allah happy. And then you say, may Allah accept it from me. Ya Allah, please accept this from me. Perhaps I came in here and I wasn't present with you, Ya Allah. But I realized I should have been. Now I am. And please, Ya Allah, accept this from me. And then when you leave here, how can I what are some ways that I can make Allah, what are some things that Allah will be happy with me if I do? Let's say, okay, from here to the train, I'm going to just do istighfar. I'm going to just focus, forget my concerns, forget the things that I'm struggling with. Step outside of yourself for a little bit. Just be like, you know what? Let me table these concerns that I've been consumed with all day. Let me just focus on how can I please Allah. Try it. You've spent all day thinking, how can I do this? How can I hustle for this? How can I make this person happy? How can I, finish this and finish that? How about you say, just let me stop. How can I please Allah? So you look for all the ways from now till you put your head on your pillow. How can I please Allah? Imagine you spend a whole day. Every time you get distracted, you come back and you say, how can I please Allah? And you ask it to yourself. How do you think that day is going to go? How can I please Allah? Someone bothers me. How can I please Allah? I need something. How can I please Allah? Oh, maybe, you know what? Maybe I can give in charity. Maybe I can give $20 here. Maybe this will be something that, please Allah. Maybe I can call that person that needed help. Maybe I can sit here and read Quran. Maybe I can make sure that when I sleep after I pray, or like sleep early, so I can get up early for tahajjud, or for, make sure I pray on time. I think we've forgotten to ask this question so much in our life. How can I please Allah? I think we're always taught, how can I please Allah to get what I want in the dunya? I need something. How can I make dua to get it? How can I increase my acts of worship so I could get what I want? But what if you start asking just, how can I please you, Ya Allah? For the sake of you. As he says here, the last part, live your life with this principle. Do good even if you don't receive good. Not because for others' sake, but because Allah loves those who do good. So let me finish this. Carry one thing, how to please Allah. Because if you please Him, He pleases you, fulfills you, and enriches you. Do not weep from a life that made your heart weep. Just say, oh Allah, compensate me with good in this life and the hereafter. My work, when I work with people a lot in times where they, let's say, receive bad news, or they're going through something, or they're really in it, right? We usually don't get people in their best of times, right? We usually get people, it's a strange business. But we get people when they're going through their hardest times a lot of times. And a lot of times we forget that in those moments when someone hurts us, or a calamity hits, or we have a loss in our lives, we forget that, this is an opportunity for me to seek from Allah what this loss has brought me. Meaning, Ya Allah, compensate me. How many of us remember, even if it's a small agitation or a hurt in our lives, Ya Allah, compensate me. Make up for this pain. And you trust in Him that He'll replace it with something better in this world or the next. So he says, do not weep from a life that made your heart weep. Just say, oh Allah, compensate me with good in this life and the hereafter. Then he says, sadness departs with a sajda. I love that sentence. Sadness departs with a sajda. Happiness comes with a sincere dua. Allah does not forget the good you do, nor does He forget the good you did to others, and the pain you relieved them from. Nor will He forget the eye which was about to cry, but you made it laugh. Don't ever let people's lack of reciprocation take away from the value and the good that you have done. Because while people might not appreciate you, Allah is ash-shakur, the most appreciative. He appreciates the tiniest good you do in this world, and He rewards you abundantly. And I promise you, that person that you're saying, that person's reaction is my reward, and not Allah's reaction to what I'm doing. So always assess, who is your priority when you do good. And then he says, so make sure, because that's where resentment comes in. You do a lot of good and then you don't see the reaction that you wanted. When you feel so resentful, a lot of times it's because you attached your intention to the wrong place. So attach it to Allah. Do good. My teacher used to always say, do good and forget about it. Do good for the sake of Allah and just forget about it. But sometimes we do good, and when we look, what are they going to do? What are they going to say? Did they say thank you? Did they say, so do good and just turn to Allah and try to forget that you did it. Don't even deem it so significant, but just deem it significant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he says, live your life with this principle. Be good even if you don't receive good, not because for others' sake, but because Allah loves those who do good. And so I want to end by just sharing this because I didn't say the full hadith before, so I want to make sure I say it accurately. The hadith about concerns. Hold on. Yes, this one is so important. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says, whoever is concerned about the hereafter, Allah will place richness in his heart, bring his affairs together, and the world will inevitably come to him. So the dunya that you left second to making, because when he says whoever's concerned about the hereafter, when you're concerned about the hereafter, what are you ultimately concerned about? Allah. Allah's being pleased with you. Allah approving of you. Allah, you earning the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever is concerned about the hereafter, and I want you to really be present with this because it's so powerful. It really gives us the formula for success in this world and the next. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, whoever is concerned about the hereafter, Allah will place a richness in his heart, bring his affairs together, and the world, this dunya, will inevitably come to him. So this dunya that you're chasing, you don't have to chase anymore. It comes to you. And then the opposite. Now, this is the opposite person. Whoever is concerned about the dunya, meaning their biggest concern is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not the akhirah, this eternal life we're going to be living, where our soul inevitably returns to. Allah will place, so whoever's concerned about this world, meaning their greatest priority is this world, Allah will place poverty between his eyes, disorder his affairs, and he will get nothing out of the world except what is decreed for him. So what are the three differences? One, he gets, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places richness in his heart. The other, poverty. So one feels so abundant, sees more, not less, gets more, not less. The other one, it's interesting, this wording of poverty. Allah places poverty between his eyes. I think it's so interesting because when you keep, like, let's say there's something here and you keep looking at it, right? You're just fixated on this one thing. You don't see anything else. But he's saying poverty is between your eyes, right? So the thing that you're fixated on is that not enough. That's what they call the scarcity mindset. You know how we say there's a abundance mindset where you always see more, and then there's the scarcity mindset where you always see less. I don't have enough, and people have this. Nothing's ever enough. I don't have enough. So that's the poverty mindset. You could call it scarcity mindset. You could call it poverty mindset, but it's between your eyes. That's what you're fixated. When you have something between your eyes, that's what you're fixated on. And it's always, I don't have enough. Always less. And you don't see anything else around you. You don't see the abundance around you. So the one who makes Allah his greatest concern, the one who makes the hereafter his greatest concern, richness in his heart. The other one has poverty. One, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings his affairs together. So all the things that you're like so focusing on, when is this area of my life going to be resolved? When is this area of my life going to be resolved? When is this area of my, and then, you're just scattered. Allah brings it all together for you. And the other one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, disorder in his affairs. Disorder his affairs. And you see this, right? Where like you're working so hard in so many areas, but you just feel nothing is coming together. Your affair, you don't feel centered. Everything is disordered, right? And then he will get nothing out of, and then the other person, the dunya, will go after him. So this dunya that you said is insignificant compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now it comes after you. And you see this in this world. Anything you ever chase, you find it running away from you. And the things you don't chase, you find it coming to you. And people, even non-Muslims, speak about this truth. It's a universal truth. The dunya, the more you chase it, the more it runs away from you. So what is the solution here? And the other one, he will get nothing out of the dunya except what is decreed for him. So what is the solution, my brothers and sisters? It is make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hereafter our biggest concern. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our akhirah and make him being pleased with us our greatest concern. Make our greatest fear be the fear of displeasing Him. May our greatest love be Him. May He be our greatest love. And may our greatest concern be the state in which we meet Him. And Ya Allah, لا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا. Ya Allah, do not make this world our biggest concern. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Oh